Hello Asim, in this short screencast I will give you feedback to your summary from last week. So on this side I'm leaving notes and now we're going to talk about the summary. First of all, let me just say that it's quite well written. You've done a good job. You tried to paraphrase using your own words. You did include a very good first sentence. Everything is clear. You mentioned the name of the speaker, the title of the video, claims that that's a good reporting verb. And the way you've put it here is really good actually. Has implicit biases, and before building a tolerant society you need an article here, then you need a comma here. People have to know how to recognize and solve. That's a really good way of putting it. Okay, very nice. So no problem with the first sentence. According to the speaker, implicit bias, I would just say use the plural because it does talk about biases in plural, all kinds of biases, so you can use this general plural throughout. Biases have three main characteristics, okay, which is built on a subconscious level in every modern person. It does talk about the fact that they are subconscious, sure, but you don't really need these words here. Especially in every modern person, I'm not very sure about that. You can just say that they are subconscious, and that's it. Or you can just say Hockett discusses three main characteristics of implicit biases, full stop. And that's enough. Because then later on you do talk about they act outside of conscious awareness. So you don't really need this consciousness, subconscious level in every modern person. It just adds words. You don't really need that. But you've done a good job here of describing or discussing the three of them. First, second, finally. So that's pretty good, very well organized. First of all, is that yeah, that's not, it's a bit clumsy. First of all, is that implicit? You can just say, first of all, comma, implicit biases, right? You don't need this. Okay. First of all, comma, implicit biases. I mean, you can say the first characteristic is that, but not first of all is that. That's what makes it a little bit clumsy. Just say first of all, comma, or firstly, or the first characteristic Hockett discusses is that implicit biases act, again you would use the plural here, outside of conscious awareness. That's very nice, very well put. And consciously, and basically even people cannot understand that they have this. Yeah, you want to rephrase this here. And basically even people cannot understand that they have this. It's a little bit informal, and by the way, it's a very good idea to use, instead of people, and you use that quite a lot, people, quite a few times actually, just say we, because we're kind of part of the audience. Our biases, we, you know, that's a good idea. Because he addresses us, everybody. And by watching this video, we participate, we're sort of part of the audience. So establish beliefs, that's the second one. And basically, yeah, so you can rephrase this. You can say, first of all, or first, or whatever, implicit biases act outside of conscious awareness, and we're often and result in and we're often not aware of them, or something like that, right? It's not that we cannot understand that they have this, but we're often unaware of our own biases, you know, something like that. But actually, if you just said, first of all, implicit bias, or first characteristic is they act outside of conscious awareness, that's enough, right? So you could add a stop here, or if you do want to expand a little bit, just make it, I guess, a bit more academic is what I'm trying to say. And basically even people cannot understand that they have this, and we are often unaware of them, or something like that, right? That's all. Secondly, comma, bias quite primarily contradicts the person's established beliefs. Again, you can just say our established beliefs. And therefore behavior and actions of people does not correspond to their values. Yeah, so again, you're trying to paraphrase, which is good. You're trying to use your own words. But here you want to rephrase that a little bit. And therefore actions of people does not correspond to their values. The whole contradiction was basically our conscious values, the things we think we believe in, versus our unconscious biases, right? So the secondly, biases, yeah, you absolutely don't need primarily here. I don't see, it's just confusing here. So just no need for primarily. Okay. Implicit biases contradict our own established beliefs, and so you want to rephrase this now. Contradict our established beliefs, and therefore behavior and actions of people does not correspond to their, here you want to say their conscious values. That's the opposition, right? And therefore, which means that often our actions and behavior do not correspond to our stated values. I think that's, you can just say that. So instead of people, you can say our, and just make sure that it's this conscious values, stated values, conscious values versus our unconscious biases, right? So secondly, or second characteristic of implicit biases is that they often contradict our established beliefs, and we often act, and our behavior and actions often do not correspond to our stated values. Just a little bit of paraphrase here. The last characteristic is that implicit biases are based on automatic thoughts. Okay, very good. Here it's thoughts is plural, this is singular. So I think like you've started with plural, and you should use the plural throughout, so that's good. Just stick with the plural. Fundamented, that's not a word. You mean, maybe you need a synonym, originate in or something like that. The last characteristic is that implicit biases are based on automatic thoughts, which originate in social stereotypes about a person or an object, something like that. Okay, but this is a very good summary overall of the second point. Okay, I mean the third point, the last characteristic. Okay, now here you want to include a linking phrase, like a bridge between the first half of the video where he discussed the characteristics and the second half where he was talking about recommendations. These are the things that we can do. So you can say something like, having discussed the three characteristics of implicit biases, Hockett goes on to offer 3 recommendations. And again, you can use the same structure, 1, 2, 3, first, second, third, right? But you don't do that here though in this summary. You only mention the shame, which was his last recommendation, and it's not even very clear what this shame is doing here and exactly what the recommendation is. The rest are not even mentioned, so you absolutely need to discuss those 3 because that is what he talked about, right? Now, you've done a very good job up to here. I would suggest you do need a bit more than just this sentence to discuss the 3 recommendations. So Hockett recommends or offers 3 recommendations or whatever, and then you list them. So the first one was, he was talking about how we need to become aware of the problem. he was saying we need to diagnose the problem, right? We need to expand our diagnosis. Again, you don't have to repeat his words, but you can rephrase it by saying we need to become aware of our own biases, and only then can we start to fix the problem, right? What he was talking about when he said diagnosis, that's really developing an awareness. So that's the first step. Then he talked about how we need to engage in what he calls predictive and preventive behavior. So you do not need to repeat that, but you can definitely say that we need to learn how to predict situations which can potentially trigger biases in us, and we need to learn how to try and avoid these biases in these situations. Something like that in your own words, you know. He was talking about prevention, right? Predicting and preventing those biases. So I can mention that. And then finally, the third recommendation, and here you sort of touch on that. He was talking about how we need to openly discuss our biases. We need to engage in open discussion without shame or guilt, and that will help us to solve the issue. First, we need to discuss it sincerely, openly, honestly, without shame. Then we can solve it. So you can include that as well, right? But I'm not sure here. That doesn't really summarize these three recommendations. So you definitely want to talk about the three recommendations, right? Okay, so I would just say expand. You do mention shame, and he did mention it too, but he was talking about let's discuss without shame or guilt. Let's be open. Okay, now this thing here, he did kind of throw that quote at the end, but that's not really a supporting idea. He just kind of said it. It's not something that we need here in this summary, because it's not really a supporting idea. Basically, he kind of said that at the end, and everybody needs somebody to be irrationally crazy about them or whatever, be irrationally in love with them, but that doesn't add anything. So I'm not sure that we even need that. In conclusion, everyone has to stop treating others through the prism of biases. Okay, that's a very good way of putting it. And prejustire. What is prejustire? That's not a word. Biases and prejudices. Stop treating us through the prism of biases and prejudice, probably is what you're trying to say. And for changing the world, the person's inside changes are needed. The person, I'm not sure. There's an apostrophe here. Okay, what did he say? Yeah, you need to make that clearer. Basically, he was saying we need to start from the inside, right? He was saying let's first examine our own biases, start doing what he calls the internal work, but you don't have to repeat his words. You can just say let's start from the inside. Finally, Hockett recommends or whatever stresses that we need to start examining ourselves and start working from the inside, and only then can we produce positive change in the world or something like that. Right? That's what he's talking about. First start from the inside, then you can change the world. But I do like this. Has to stop treating others through the prism of biases and prejudice. That's really well phrased here. So you can keep that definitely. So yeah, overall, again, as usual, quite well written, organized. I would say expand a bit on the three recommendations. So I hope this is helpful to you, SM. Good luck.